All right, Daniel Glaser, I interrupted you. You were telling me about where you are in the family spectrum.
Yes, I've had a lot happen in the past few years. I met my wife in 2021,
Wow.
and in 2022, we got married.
Okay.
I have a 2-year-old boy who is absolutely wild
Yes.
right now, going through the terrible boots for sure. Um, he
Uh-huh.
was born in 23.
Okay.
Then we just had a daughter who is 7 weeks old. So
Oh my lord.
2 kids under 2. Tyler, my son, is sick, couldn't go to preschool all week, and the babysitter had an unexpected surgery. So we're home with 2 kids and trying to get through a minute at a time.
I think you got me beat, homeboy. That's good. That's fantastic. I mean, those are wild times. And it doesn't necessarily get easier, but I don't know. I guess it's easier. It's
I've been
not.
told it's, little kids, little problems, big kids, big problems. So
Oh, that is so wise. Yeah, that's pretty much right where I've got a 15-year-old boy who's in
mhm.
his first year of high school, a 12 sorry, 13-year-old daughter, and then we're like a month away from my third child is turning 10. So
Wow.
so yeah, we're right in that space where, you know, people are my son is making decisions that are going to affect his outcomes, and my daughter's just right around the corner is kind of right in that space a little bit. And and it's really exciting. It's fun. But the space that you're in right now is pretty radical, pretty magical.
Yeah,
Wow. That's a real fast trajectory.
it is. A lot of change, but it's all for the best, and I really couldn't be happier.
That's awesome. So Daniel, you're in property management.
Correct. Yes. Residential specifically, mostly apartment buildings, LA
Right.
rent control, Santa Monica rent control. I do a number of higher end single family houses, condos, but I started my career as an apartment building broker with both Sperry Van Ness and then Marcus and Millichap. So
Right.
no, what I know best is city of LA rent control apartments.
Right. How was your experience as a broker?
Um, It was difficult. I mean, I'd make, the 100 calls a day, tons of rejection, just trying to get through to people. But, I quickly learned that I wanted to be on the other side of the phones on the principal side, and I have a long family history in commercial real estate, so it all just kinda stumbled into buying a building in 2016 and starting a property management company a couple years later, and we were at
Mhm.
5 units, and now we're at 400 units today, so that happened really quickly also.
Congratulations. That's really great. I in the brokerage space, it's tough because, there's this, I've struggled with this. There's this challenge of transactional volume is the only thing that puts food on the table.
Mhm.
And what I suspect is that most folks that get into property management, they typically are, a little bit more intimately involved in the actual real estate. And there's sort of a desire to want to add value to the client relationship. And it's a little bit, I don't want to, but I want to use the word softer. It's a little bit of a softer edge. And for temperament's a little bit different and so on and so forth. And that's hard as a broker. It's hard for me to rectify those because I find myself really wanting to add value to the conversation and transactional volume isn't always served by sort of approaching the client's perspective and looking at everything, including property management and whatnot.
Mhm.
And so candidly, the reason why we're here right now is um, one of the things that I am seeing in the industry, and I want to talk to you about this a little bit, is that we have a lot of folks in that own these apartment buildings that really don't have a clear path forward. They're a little bit selling for them just doesn't necessarily make sense for their family or their strategic needs, and yet at the same time, the regulatory environment and whatnot is really, really challenging. And so, we were looking at our team and we wanted to make sure that we provided some kind of context and get to reintroduce ourselves and the property management community to our clients because I think that property management sits in a really interesting space right now, probably more necessary than they've ever been before, especially for that mom and pop investor that maybe had a pretty good run running the operation themselves. Maybe they're at retirement. Maybe it's just the regulatory environment that's so oppressive that makes it really hard for a mom and pop to stay in compliance and whatnot. And that, candidly is a huge opportunity for property management. And that's kind of where we wanted to jump into. So, um, let's continue the point where you were with the brokerage and moving into the 400 units. Where where are your where do you see yourself? You said you're mostly Los Angeles. Where is your base of operation? Tell me a little bit more about your property management company.
So we're a small family company. We manage mostly on the west side. As you can see, I work out of my house. All of my teammates, all of our team members are remote. I really don't see a need to have a single office space at this point because we're always on the run.
Mhm.
Uh, I normally draw the line around Fairfax, to go Fairfax and West, but I manage a number of properties in Los Feliz, Silver Lake, Echo Park. But I really, and I think this just kind of speaks to my management style, is I do not want to manage properties more than 20, 30 minutes away from where I live.
Right,
Just too important to be able to get to a property quickly if an emergency comes up. And ultimately, that's why someone's hiring you
right.
to be there. When they're not hiring you for the good times, they're hiring you for the bad times.
That's the truth, right? Your ski vacations must be horrible because you don't get to go on them. I mean, that's always been the thing is that, when water heaters only break between 11:30 at night and 3 in the morning. So that seems to be, a pretty consistent, and that's just it puts a huge strain on your capacity to kinda ever be off.
Exactly. It's, I call it a lifestyle. This is the life I chose. Ultimately, but what's really interesting is it doesn't matter if you own, one rental property, a few units or 1,000 of them.
Yeah,
Yeah, same. You're always on, you always gotta be ready. So I
yeah.
think, I actually think brokerage taught me a lot about keeping a level head in terms of rejection and people just being angry at you.
Right.
But, when a tenant complains to me, about a toilet or something like that, it's like, okay, I'll make a call and fix it.
Mhm.
You can't get emotionally involved. You have to be detached to a certain extent.
Right.
Showing people you're there for them, but yeah, you just gotta, you gotta keep a level head, realize that vacations aren't the same. I mean, between having my 7-week-old and 2-year-old, I don't think there are gonna be any vacations anytime soon.
Yeah, true that.
We tried going to Hawaii earlier this year, and it was just a disaster. So I'm happy to have an easy weekend at home.
It's a quick sidebar because it is so funny, when you have your first child for sure, it's so funny to be like, my son, I remember going to eat Legoland with him. And, you have all these new parents and they've got their babies like on Bjorns and in strollers and they're not going to ever remember it. And here they are walking around, Legoland. And I did it too. There were so many memories I created, where the kids are like, no, that never happened, We're like, "Don't you remember we went," But you're so excited to be a parent, you wanna show your kids, like, some of the things that are out there, and you wanna do parenty stuff. But it's, you know by the way, don't go to Legoland. No offense to Legoland, but you only need to go to Legoland if you're from Louisiana and you're out in California and you feel like blowing a couple $100 on something that you will never return to again. And Legoland knows that. And no offense to Lego, company, but that it is from my perspective, it's the most underwhelming part of the entire state of California. And for $100 admission, I'd say skip it. Um, all right. So you're mostly in West Los Angeles. that's fantastic. West LA is filled with 6 and 8 and 10 and 12 unit buildings. Is that kind of the space that you find yourself operating in?
That's correct. I mean, what I specialize in, or what the majority of my clients are accidental landlords, is what I
Mhm.
would call. They inherited a property, they used to live in the property, moved out, decided to hold on to the property because they had the means to buy another house and just collect the income. Um, but yeah, I mean, a large majority, I think this is something you're seeing demographically, is that a lot of the property owners right now are significantly older. And in terms of an operations standpoint, a lot of them are passing on the operations to their kids who are in their 40s or 50s. And those kids realize there's too many laws, there's too much to pay attention to, that it's scary. I mean, it's really frightening, how many rules there are. So they turn to someone like me.
Right.
Um, and even if, it works out great with me, there are things that come up, like, especially as of recent, all of the insurance issues. We could have a property that's operating beautifully, nothing really ever happens. And then insurance says, hey, you have Zinsco electrical panels.
Right. Yep.
Here you go. Here's, you got to spend tens of thousands of dollars, or the balcony bill, or it's like, here, your stairs, your exterior stairs aren't up to snuff. Here's another $50,000. And what I think a lot of people don't realize, which I certainly didn't realize when I was in brokerage, is that a lot of these property owners are not extremely wealthy people. Um,
Yeah.
it takes a lot, even if they own the property outright, there's a lot of cash outflow because of these new rules and regulations that have come in. And unfortunately, some people have to sell because of that. And it's an unfortunate situation to really hurt the little guy.
Right. Yeah, no, and we might save that part of the conversation is regulatory and the little guy versus, sort of the widespread, belief about who landlords are. But you said something that I thought was sort of spurred an idea or at least a question for you is, it is very true that there's a regulatory environment that definitely is requiring more checklists, so to speak. Um, when you take over a property, like what is your strategy for addressing, how a building, gets onboarded into your system? Walk me through how kind of like what that looks like.
So I have an ideal checklist that I will send to the client or to the old property management company. But, like, for instance, I just started managing an 8 unit building in, Miracle Mile. Really pretty building. The interiors of the units are nice. They're classic. Tenants seem good. But the property was inherited by a few brothers, and it's not like it was professionally managed where I'm given, here's all the utility bills, here's the certificate of occupancy or rent registration. We did the balcony bill inspection the other day. It's really kind of I try to take a softer approach when people inherited a property and don't
Mhm.
necessarily run it as a business. So
Right.
I try to slowly introduce those concepts. I mean, it also depends on time of year. If I'm picking up a new client in January and they have a rent control building in Los Angeles, that's the perfect time to talk about, hey, rent registration stuff is due. We got to get the certificate. Are you signed up for these fees?
Mhm.
A lot of people don't even realize what they don't realize.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll bet that there's that I mean, that's even true in brokerage. I was speaking with somebody yesterday and we were talking about a building. I'm a general contractor as well as a broker. And so in the last couple of years, I've found myself getting quite involved in some of the projects. So I was talking with one client and they said, you know, I know that you want to sell it and I know you've put a lot of money into the building, but and it was like, with all due respect, I know what my clients are telling me. And, there's a difference between what, some landlords believe to be like a high level of management or a big investment, so to speak, versus what sort of like the background, I don't want to say reality, but the background knowledge of being day in, day out, what you know about, how systems are, and that process of educating is definitely could be can be nuanced because, people have personalities, and that definitely requires, um, I think that it's not that it matters, but I think it's wise to have a soft touch bringing that together because it's not always obvious that or what's out there and what is necessary. So,
Absolutely. Just one thought on that is that
yeah.
it's really difficult because at the end of the day, I'm a small family business helping small family businesses. All of these apartment buildings are businesses unto themselves, 2 to
Right.
100 units, it doesn't matter. And a lot of times my clients have seen their parents run these buildings a certain way for decades.
Right.
I'm telling him, "Hey, this rule came up," or, "Hey, like, your stairs are not safe. You have to do something about it."
Mhm.
It's just mind-blowing, and some people take it as offensive because it's not what they've seen. So, it's really kind of trying to change the way people understand the way the business operates.
Yep. I totally hear you there. That's definitely, again, I think it's probably pretty wise. Well, having said that, when you are onboarding a building, what are the things that you're looking for?
I'm looking for obvious defects. I try to really listen to what the tenants are saying.
Mhm.
I do an immediate inspection. I get a plumber in there, an electrician in there. I try to walk it together. Ideally, tenants are there so I can see what's going on, learn the personalities.
Mhm.
And you can learn a lot about a unit and the way a building is run just by walking through one unit and hearing a tenant talk. Um, a lot of the operations of the property do depend on who the tenants are. I mean, you can have one bad tenant really ruin everything. These are investments. Investments have risks.
Yeah.
The bad tenants are the most expensive thing that can happen to a landlord.
Amen to that. Um, with that in mind, when you got in the business, when did you start again? Bring me back to the start point of the business and remind me, you were brokering. Why did you decide to get into property management?
So, it was an accident, essentially.
Okay.
I'll bring you back a few generations to where the story really starts.
Okay, let's do it.
So I always thought I was gonna be a psychologist like my mom.
So did I.
She was a clinician, private practice, saw people one-on-one, normal crazy is what I call it, divorce, death,
Mhm.
day-to-day issues.
Right.
So I was going into my senior year in college. I was looking at the job prospects in psychology, and I saw I don't want to be a researcher. I don't
Right.
want to be a professor, and I didn't want to do what my mom did.
Mhm.
So what am I going to do with my life?
Mhm.
And I was in Maui. I remember being in the beach on a vacation with my mom and my brother, and I'm like, "Mom, like, what does our family do? What do your friends do? Like, what am I gonna do?"
Mhm.
It was then I learned that I'm technically a 4th generation commercial real estate owner operator. My great-grandparents came through Ellis Island and owned hotels in New Jersey.
Oh my gosh.
My grandfather worked his way up from collecting rents in the tenements in New York City to owning office buildings there and various triple nets across the East Coast. My mom had inherited a Burger King in Brentwood, New York, which is not anywhere near as prestigious as the Brentwood here.
Okay.
I just thought it was the coolest thing. I was like, wow, my mom has Burger King. I remember as a teenager just thinking that was awesome.
Oh yeah, it is awesome.
I never realized that I thought these were like trophy properties like a beach house in Malibu. Not I
Right.
didn't realize that they were businesses.
Right.
So, I through some more digging and stuff, I found out my grandfather was also an office building broker. He managed stock exchanges at the early in the century. And then it was really at that point, and then of course my mom inherited some of his properties. And it was at that point I realized, wow, this is what paid for everything in my life. Is what paid for my private school, the house,
There it is. Yeah.
really everything. And I'm like, wow, I want to do what my grandfather did.
Right.
I applied to a bunch of brokerages out of college. I heard back from only a couple, got there first day thinking people are going to hand me leads, and how
Mhm.
hard could it be?
Mhm.
So I just, I didn't realize that these were literally investments in the sense where you have income and expenses and businesses.
Right. It
So that's where I learned really quickly, like, hey, I see the path to an extent of what I knew at the time. I really want to get on the ownership side.
Right.
I was able to convince my family to get a small 5 unit building in Westwood Century City area, just south
Mhm.
Boulevard, right at the corridor.
Mhm.
We got really lucky and a few of the units turned. We did really extensive renovations, and I thought, wow, I'm really good at this.
Mhm.
Got the rents up a time, and that was 2016. Shortly after that, my mom got really sick, and we don't have a father in our life and very few family out on the West Coast. So
Mm.
my brother and I had to take my mom back and forth to the hospital and doctor's appointments for really a couple of years then. It was really scary.
Wow.
She unfortunately passed away 6 months ago, but
Oh my god, dang.
she she got to see a lot. So it was like 2018. I really had just been taking care of my mom, and I'm thinking, well, I can't have a normal job if I'm taking my
Right.
way to the hospital and there's no one else really to help her. So I thought, well, we own this one building, I manage it. Why don't I manage for other people? So I learned pretty quickly that you have to get a broker's license in the state of California to do third party property management, which means for other managing other people's properties. I did that. I was, still really working out of hospitals on my laptop. And we had 5 units under management when I incorporated and opened to the public in 2019. And here we are today at 400. And we really started when COVID started.
Wow.
So it was really an interesting way to start my career during such a unusual time.
But it was that's a pretty moving story, Daniel. I mean, for a softie, I'm kinda moved by that, that it is interesting that oftentimes, the big decisions that we make in our life are oftentimes really motivated by that necessity, and the old adage that, necessity is the mother of invention, but it oftentimes is that thing that just pushes you from the thinking about it halfway there to the, "Oh my god," like, there's no other decision to make but to make this thing happen, and, so, again, my condolences to your mother. I know that uh, can't I can't even imagine how hard that is, but at the same time, obviously, I can only imagine that you see all the flowers in your life right now, your family and your children and this budding business to be a reflection of that entire story, and I really thank you for taking me back and showing me the path all the way from Ellis Island, New York, all the way out to here, and that you're out here and you're doing it and you're making it happen, so that's pretty cool.
Thank you.
Um, with regard to then and now, because you are you came into it at an interesting point. I mean, COVID, that really was like regulatory steroids. And so there's not as much. I mean, your personal experience right on the front end was even then there was, the screws were being turned and the cash for keys and everything was reaching, sort of a higher space. But having said that, what can you say about the business today that, and maybe this is just a reflection of your client, conversations as well, but for the person who's been doing this for a little while, what what have you seen in the evolution, even in this from 2016 to today, that kinda changes or informs your business practice as a property manager?
I think the biggest thing that really I would imagine is that COVID accelerated was the education that tenants now have
Yeah.
regarding rules and regulations and rights and things like that. I mean, look, we all want what's fair. but at the same time trying to extort landlords or to, just make unfair threats. It's something you have to be careful about, and you just have to be extra careful with tenant selection and really just look to things beyond the application and the background,
Right.
which I hate to say because it's like, what how do you choose a tenant? You have them apply, you look at their application, their income, their scores, their references, but there's an X factor, which is their personality and frankly, what are they bringing up about the lease? What are they bringing up in that initial tour that's a red flag? So you have to have really good, spidey senses for who's going to be a bad tenant and who's going to be, someone who is going to cause problems on that end. So I think the tenant education is really difficult.
And that's I find that to be exceptionally hard because I was a former school teacher, right? So my path to real estate's a wacky one. And um as a school teacher, former school teacher, I have like this very high sense of belief about the capacity of people to be good people, right? And whenever I see someone who has experienced maybe some struggle, my first inclination is, what can I do to give this person an opportunity, so that they have the opportunity to make good decisions?
Mhm.
That's so hard. I'm a landlord and I manage, I have some units. I manage them and I have some investors and so on and so forth. But I've made that mistake where you impart. At least this is what I do. I end up imparting a belief system about how a person's gonna make decisions, and sometimes that that will whitewash something that maybe somebody that's a little more sober in their appraisal says, "Mm," you know, "red flag."
Yeah, I think you hit on something super important, which is I think there are various or plenty of aspects in life where it's the right thing to do for both parties to take a chance on someone who's,
Absolutely.
going through a hard time or just, signing up as a mentor of some sort.
R
But I will say this with 100% certainty. Every time I've had a client who took a chance on someone or I gave someone some extra leeway or just thinking, "Oh, well, they're almost at the 3 times the rent," or they're just having a difficult few months or something. It never works out in this business, at least to give someone the benefit of the doubt and take a chance on someone because it's just too risky. When you sign with a tenant, you are stuck with them.
Let
So,
me ask you this, is that because is that because the regulatory environment creates um, a space for I'm gonna use the word, again, my inclination for, there's this good, bad, and there's what's the word? Oh my gosh. What is the word for someone who sees an opportunist, right? Which is not like brokerage by in its nature is opportunist. So this is I'm not loading that with a negative connotation. But does the regulatory environment create a dynamic where an opportunist that's in a corner is presented with easy options to make bad ethical decisions that then negatively affect a landlord?
oh man. Um, I think the issue is that when bad actors from the start, are successful,
Mhm.
um, they can be covered up in the sense where it's like, okay, you're about to evict someone, or you're in the eviction proceedings and
Right.
end up settling on the side because it takes 6 months to actually get someone out of the property. Um, and then their eviction is or, the eviction trial is covered, and you
Right.
find it in the records, and the problem is it's incentives, it's just like the rest of the economy. If someone is successful and rewarded for that behavior, they're gonna do it again.
That's true.
and they're getting better and better at it.
Yeah. Yeah, COVID was tough. I mean, I can't tell you how many we had tenants where it was easier to write a check. And there were some landlords I talked to, they go, "What did you do?" And I was like, "I wrote him a check to leave," you know, because it was gonna cost that much and more. And, you're right. The downside to that was I made a business decision.
Mm,
It didn't help the ethical problem at all because that person got to walk away from not paying rent for 2 years with my money
mhm,
and go do it again, you know? But the decision was face the uphill battle of dealing with eviction moratoriums and all this regulatory stuff that was supposed to help people that were in crisis. So let me ask you this then, because this is sort of the central crux, and I always try not to play the demonize the tenants and champion the landlord conversation. I think that it can be a bit one-sided, um, just as it is to demonize landlords and champion tenants, right? Which you see a lot of in the public discourse. How do you fix that dynamic as a property operator? What would you do to make it so that the landlords and tenants have a fair playing? 'Cause the theory is that what we have in place right now is trying to level the playing ground. What would you do if you had control to, quote, unquote, "adjust the playing field"?
so I think you hit on the issue, which is, if handled incorrectly, is what will lead to the demise of a lot of people's apartment building businesses.
Yeah.
Because being in a bad tenant situation can not only cause damage to the property, but will cause huge financial damage over time, can influence other tenants in the building. So, I mean, it's an extremely important point that you bring up. And I think it all comes back to your attitude and how you approach the situation.
Mhm.
I hear from prospective clients all the time how they talk about tenants. You can't start from the other side sucks. It's like, if this is psychology to a certain extent, and
Right,
inter intergroup relations.
right.
And what I can't believe I'm even bringing this up, but I studied abroad in Israel and Haifa when I was a junior in college. Obviously, a lot of intergroup, dynamics going on.
Yeah,
And in terms of intergroup relations, the only thing that will lead to progress is empathy. So
yeah,
look at tenant landlord relations, you really have to do it successfully is you need to come in with the right attitude, come in with empathy, and really just try to show someone that you're there for them. Whether you're the property manager, the landlord, whatever it is, hey, I'm here. I'm hearing you out. Communication is the start of it all. When I take over a property, obviously post notices and do all the logistical stuff, but it's very important in those initial conversations with the tenants to show like, hey, we're here, we're responsive. If you're going to reach out to us, we're going to hear you. We may not do everything you want us to, but we're going to be human beings and treat you like a human being. And I think
right.
it goes a lot longer of a way than most people even realize.
That's super insightful, and I I have a strong inclination to agree with you that there's the tendency to utilize power in an irresponsible way is a two-way street. And so when people start to lean on the power that is bestowed on them, right? I posted the notices, this, or I know my rights. I'm not paying my rent until, then you dehumanize that connectivity, and people stop looking at the basic bargain that is being made is you are providing housing and I am paying you rent for that housing.
Mhm.
And so again, from my perspective, it's, there's not a perfect balance as how to do the tenant and landlord, you know, dance.
Mhm.
Um, but it definitely has something to do with having that bilateral contract where they both are entering into this scenario and they both have the opportunity to come in and come out of it with some level of freedom. Um, where do you want to take your business?
That's a great question. Honestly, I really don't know because it's working great right now. I choose who I work with. I do not just take on anybody, especially in terms of a geographic range, but we're growing steadily but responsibly. And I think,
Mhm,
property management is a very predictable income stream.
mhm,
See us getting to 1,000 units in the next 5 years? Maybe. As long as the infrastructure is there, we're still handling things responsibly, being on top of everything, and, showing landlords and tenants that we're there. As long as we can do that responsibly, which it has been, we'll keep growing. But despite all of this, I would still love to, continue the family legacy per se and continue to buy investment properties.
What do you think, um, what do you think if one is comparing you to another property management company, let's just say somebody big, I'm not gonna use any names because I might interview them soon too, but, um, what do you say, it's like, what's the value add and who's the right, you mentioned you don't take everyone, so that's an interesting, dynamic where you're like, it's a true relationship that you're starting at the out of the gate. Um, so who's the right fit for you, and why do they choose you over somebody else, do you think?
That's a good question. Ultimately, there are a few different things I look at when someone approaches me. And I'm definitely not the right property manager for everyone. I can say that hands down. I look at where's the property,
Mhm,
the condition of the property, how are the tenants, are there any legal issues? Is there anything, I'm really trying to get information in terms of what are you not telling me? Why are you really calling me? Uh,
okay.
but then I look at the person. Is this someone I wanna work with? Is this someone who's reasonable? Is this
Mhm,
who is not up to date with how much things cost and stuck in 20 years ago and, realizing that, no one charges $50 just to come out these days.
right,
So someone who's realistic, someone who's somewhat technologically savvy to help so that they can use my property management software and really feel like they can educate themselves whenever they want to.
mhm,
They but, what ultimately makes me different is we are a small family company. I mean,
mhm,
400 units, it's a lot of units, keeps us busy clearly, but we're not a huge corporation, we're not just taking on clients to grow. I'm not looking to buy other property management companies. I'm not looking to be bought by another property management company or private equity group that I get calls from all the time. But we're a small family company who's helping other small family companies.
mhm,
Um, you know, we're landlords ourselves. I think that goes a really long way. And then I think kind of as I've alluded to in other aspects of this conversation is just really a human touch. I signed a client yesterday with their townhouse and or their duplex in Santa Monica. And they're like, hey, we spoke to a lot of your competitors and you actually came out and met us and talked to us and really empathized with their situation.
right,
And, that type of person who is looking for that, recognizes that, and rewards that is the type of client because it is a partnership. I mean,
right,
when you get into a management agreement with someone, you're going to be communicating a lot. So you want to make sure that's going to be a strong relationship. But I do not want to work with people who are, just trying to cut corners, do unethical things, or just not take care of the properties because
mhm.
I don't do that and I can't work like that and I won't.
I love it. That's great. Um, we've covered a fair amount of ground, and I feel like, you know, before I dig through and see what other questions I can ask, you know, I have a sense for your growth. I have a sense for your business. What are you, what's keeping you up at night these days?
Uh, um, the obvious answer would be my kids. Uh,
Yeah.
my 2-year-old refuses to go in a sleep sack now, which means he has more motion with his
Mhm.
body. He started to learn how to climb out of his crib.
Mhm.
It's only a matter of time until he shows up in our bed in the middle of the night. Um, what am I thinking? My wife and I are thinking about buying a new house and a better school district. Those are the things I think about.
Yeah.
I try not to think about I try not to let work really keep me up because this is the type of business where you can get in a really bad headspace if you let things affect you
Mhm.
too much. I mean, look, I stay up at night thinking about certain client issues? Yes, but that's because I care about the client and because I
Sure.
want that's resolution. And oftentimes, if there's a legal situation, I'm dragged into it as well by nature.
Yeah.
Do I worry about that? Yeah, of course, all the time. But, I think brokerage taught me, or just maybe from, like, being an athlete growing up and playing basketball, is that you need to keep a level head. Otherwise, you're just gonna get consumed and not have a happy life.
Yeah. Yeah. Wise words, my friend. Well, so, in keeping with that thought process, what habits do you think you maintain in the lifestyle thing that allows you to keep your level head and keep that balance, in a very, very demanding. I mean, you've got probably one of the more demanding roles to fill in terms of client interaction and maintenance, because most of the time you're communicating well, I mean, it sounds like you're communicating with people even when things are going good, I will say. But you are constantly in the business of giving people bad news, and they're probably contacting you when they feel like they've got bad news. So, with all that being said and all that management and all that work and so on and so forth, what are you doing? What is the habit that you think that you could share to the world that helps keep the waters calm in the world of Daniel Glaser?
I think a large majority of how I'm able to, and definitely not all the time, if you ask my wife, she would disagree with me to a certain extent. No, you guys realize, like, how much actually is on my plate.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it comes down to deciding who you're gonna work with. Can people change? Of course, people change, but I do not sign up clients I have a bad feeling about from the start.
Mhm.
Are people going to get angry off their rocker or, fall into financial straits that have nothing to do with these properties? Yeah, absolutely. But it's just like any other business, it's the relationships.
Right.
I think empathizing with someone's situation. And frankly, I think it really helps that I'm a landlord as well because I can really understand what these people are going through,
Absolutely.
especially when they own property with their family, which adds a just completely different dynamic. But I think really examining things from different perspectives and really bringing to light to educate the client, like, hey, I know this is how you feel. Here's what the law says. Here's what the tenant says. I know the law says this. This is reality. This is what I would do, or this is what I've done.
Mhm.
We should proceed this way.
Mhm.
Um, but it's very emotional because it's really hard when it's your own property. I will say this: I am not as good a property manager with my family's property as I am with others because it's extremely emotional when
Yeah.
property. So I think just having that distance helps me keep a level head. And I've seen a lot of crap. I mean,
Yeah.
I've been doing this 6 years or so, but it's been a crazy 6 years.
It's been the 6 years. If you get through these 6 years, yeah, nothing compares. from a management standpoint. I mean, I've been in this game for a couple more,
Mhm.
and nothing compares. It's a totally different play field. So if you handle these last 6 years, you know, it's hopefully only gonna get easier. But all right, well, Daniel, remind me the name of your company again.
It's Glaser Property Management.
Glaser Property Management. It sounds like you've got a bright future. It sounds like the future's already, your existence right now. Your present tense is nice and bright, and I wish the best to you. And let's definitely stay in touch. And thanks for coming on the show. Really do appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Talk to you soon. Okay.